Hello there. I'm sorry I didn't give you warning that I was going live at 10 a.m., but I am. This morning, first of all, are you interested in Enochian magic, the magic of Dr. John Dee and Edward Kelly, the Elizabethan magicians? If you are, you may get a kick out of today's reading from my article in the 2005, September 2005 edition of Fate magazine. And it's in there with Roswell Revisited and other sort of strange story kind of sensational things. But I wrote a couple articles for Fate magazine. I was asked to by the editor back in 2005. And this is one of them. Now, if you're interested and if you already even practice Enochian magic, you may get a kick out of today and tomorrow's reading because I give actual examples of how we as a group setting at Monday Night Magic class introduced Enochian magic to people and actually performed Enochian magic evocations. Now, Enochian magic is vision magic. You do it to induce visions, and everybody, of course, has their own vocabulary of images and impressions and concepts that make sense to them uniquely. So everybody's vision is different and unique in its own delivery, but we'll talk about that a little later into it. This article is called Queen Elizabeth's Real Life Merlin Holds Key to Reincarnation. Now that's a headline perfect for Fate magazine. Queen Elizabeth's Real Life Merlin holds key to reincarnation. Well, actually, in a very real way, it does, and we've discovered that it can. But that's just sort of the style that I was writing for Fate magazine. And of course, it's got the picture of John Dee right there. That's the classic picture. Most of us are familiar with the story of King Arthur and Merlin the Magician. My favorite retelling of the tale is John Boorman's classic 1981 film Excalibur, in which the inimitable Nicole Williamson chews the scenery as Merlin. Nobody knows for sure if the story, or even part of the story of King Arthur and Merlin, is fact or fable. But it's a historic fact that Queen Elizabeth I had a real live magician in her court. His name was Dr. John Dee, and his exploits in service of the Queen, the Virgin Queen, are no less astounding than the legendary exploits of Merlin. More so because we have detailed records of many of his magical deeds. Under the heading Scholar, Spy, and Magician, we could apply those same adjectives to Aleister Crowley, scholar, spy, and magician. John Dee, 1527 to 1608, maybe 1609. Nobody is confident. John Dee was a true Renaissance magus, considered by many to be the greatest mind of his day. His library in Mortlake, England, housed the most extensive collection of books in the country, perhaps the largest private collection in the world. More than a brilliant scholar, he was the world's most celebrated and widely published mathematician. He was also a master physician, chemist, engineer, geographer, theologian, and inventor. His maritime charts and navigational inventions helped make Britannia ruler of the waves. He even coined the term Britannia and planted in Elizabeth's mind the concept of the British Empire. Now, I digress here for a second. We have to remember that in the early 1500s, Britain wasn't an empire, at least not where the sun never sets kind of empire. England was still an island and a rather minor character in European politics and economy. The idea of England being aggressively colonial, aggressively imperialistic, didn't really start to bubble and focus itself until after Henry VIII. Now, I'm sure you can nitpick a million things that disagree with that generalization, but the casual term British Empire didn't happen until Dee planted that idea in Elizabeth's brain. But I digress. Dee was the Queen's confidant and counselor from the very beginning of her remarkable reign. A master astrologer, he was allowed to choose the most auspicious date and hour for her coronation. Because Dee traveled extensively and could speak more than a dozen languages, Elizabeth enlisted his services as a spy. In fact, she called him her eyes. Her, quote, eyes, unquote. And as such, he would sign his secret dispatches to her with the symbol that represented two vigilant eyes shaded by a hand. 007. Yes, Dr. John Dee was the original secret agent 666. Excuse me. Secret agent 007. That truly was a Freudian slip. A tidbit of historical trivia that did not escape the attention of former British intelligence officer Ian Fleming when he created his fictional super spy James Bond. Now, next time you're in Washington, D.C., be sure to visit the International Spy Museum, where some of Dee's espionage exploits are featured. But Dee was more than his queen's James Bond. He was also her Merlin. Dee was a skilled and powerful magician who didn't hesitate to use his magic on Her Majesty's Secret Service. In 1588, when it was learned that Spain had launched her mighty armada to destroy England's fleet, Dee counseled Elizabeth to keep her ships at bay, assuring her that a terrible storm would soon smash the Spanish armada to pieces. That's exactly what she did, and that's exactly what happened. Dee was credited with magically raising the tempest that saved England. The story of this event became instant legend. William Shakespeare, writing only 23 years later, would use Dee as the model for Prospero, the storm-raising magician in his play The Tempest. Okay, under the heading Language of the Angels. Not all of Dee's magical adventures were so well publicized. For over 300 years after his death, only a handful of people were aware of an even more bizarre chapter in Dee's life. While attempting to use remote viewing to spy upon enemies of the Queen, Dee made contact with spiritual intelligences who identified themselves as the same angels that communicated with the biblical patriarchs. And the biblical patriarch Enoch before the Great Flood. Over a period of 4 years of almost daily encounters, these entities taught Dee and his assistant, Edward Kelly, 1555 to 1597, the sacred language of the angels and the magical procedures to use that language to communicate directly with these powerful forces. Modern language experts, including the late Donald C. Laycock, who compiled an extensive dictionary of the angels' language, recognize this Enochian tongue as a bona fide language with its own grammar and syntax. When translated into English, the various calls or keys that Dee and Kelly received from the angels are stunning in their poetic power and beauty. Now, the article includes an old picture of Edward Kelly. Space does not permit me to describe the complex method by which the angels painstakingly taught their language to Dee and Kelly, but the story remains. The story is the most remarkable magical tale ever recorded. And recorded it was. Dee took detailed and copious notes, many of which survived the centuries and are accessible today to anyone who's interested. Ironically, after spending years receiving the tools and instructions for this marvelous system of angelic communication, Dee and Kelly seemed to have run out of steam before they had a chance to use it properly. It was if they had received the blueprints for an automobile that they never got to build and drive. After Dee's death, the bulk of his manuscripts found their way to private collections, the British Museum, and the British Library. And among those private collections is the collections of Elias Ashmole, and some of them and some of Dee's material is currently housed in the Ashmolean Museum at Oxford. Okay, they're stored at the British Library, British Museum, where they're preserved and catalogued, awaiting the day when someone would recognize their significance and work the magic. In the late 1800s, someone finally did. And since then, the Enochian genie have been out of the bottle. Let's see how we're doing for time here. Okay, I'm going to read a little more today. The Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. Does that make your ears perk up out there? The Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn was founded in 1887 by a handful of high-degree English Freemasons and Theosophists for the purpose of teaching its members the principles of occult science and magic. However, it was more than just a school of instruction. It was an initiatory society whose ceremonies were designed to raise the consciousness of each member step by step so that he or she might better understand and safely utilize higher and higher levels of occult information. During its short life, some very important and famous people were members of the Golden Dawn, including T. Eris Annie Horniman, poet William Butler Yeats, and the great actress Florence Farr, and also the notorious mountaineer poet Aleister Crowley. It is even rumored, just rumored, that Sherlock Holmes' creator Arthur Conan Doyle and Dracula's creator Bram Stoker were part of the scene, although there's no hard evidence proving them to be Order members. The founding fathers of the Golden Dawn recognized Dee's Enochian material for what it was. They realized that with a little innovation and organization, they could pick up where Dee and Kelly left off and actually begin using the system to communicate with angels. And that's where we're going to leave it today. We'll finish up this article. We'll likely finish it up tomorrow. I hope you're getting a kick out of the sensationalist language of Lon DuQuette when he writes for Fate magazine. Okay, continue to wish us luck on our house hunting exploits. Also, the Jupiter talisman making Zoom workshop has been recorded and processed and is now available for, I think $25. If you just, I'll leave information. You can just email me or PayPal me 25 and I'll take care of it from there. But when you PayPal me, please write in the subject thing, "This is for Jupiter," and then I'll send it along. Okay, we've been stressed out, gang. Continue to be good to yourself and be good to each other. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law. Love under will.